All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. If you got your question, go ahead and post it there on the right-hand side. You should be able to see where you can post questions to instructors. So go ahead and do that, and we'll get started. I see I got a couple questions in here to start out with. As you know, I always start out with the questions that up to an hour before. So if you got questions, you can post them up to an hour before, and they'll get answered right away. So Stan B comes on here and posted this question about 24 minutes ago. It says, I have been toying somewhat with my grip. Elementary, I suspect, yet would you mind reviewing a correct, efficient gripping of the club? Thanks, Stan. So, Stan, you're exactly right. I think too many people buy into getting way too detailed with the grip. Now, specifically for you, you can get into details as far as how strong or weak your grip's going to be. And by that, I mean how basically your hand is situated on the grip, either this way or that way. So this would be, if you're looking at my top hand here, this would be a weak grip. You can see the V of my hands kind of pointing up toward my chin. And then if I turn my thumb to where it's more on the back side of the grip, that'd be a very strong grip, which would be pointed, a little bit outside my shoulder. So that in of itself, that's personal preference. You just kind of have to fool around with that to see what works best for you. As far as, you hear people talk about the Varden grip, the overlapping grip, the interlocking grip. It's what you see with probably most tour players. A majority of tour players are probably using an interlocking grip. Then you also have a 10-finger grip as well. So as far as that goes, again, that's personal preference. See what feels most comfortable to you. Maybe one gives you better results over the other. The main thing here is just to make sure that your hands are together. This helps you feel more of a connected feeling between your hands. If you're going to the 10-finger grip, which I have no issue with whatsoever, the main thing is you can't have a hockey grip, right? Get those hands together. There's lots of people I've seen who play really well with a 10-finger grip. If you're someone who's maybe not real strong, a lot of juniors use a 10-finger grip, and that's completely fine. Women, we're a little bit, don't have as much strength, as some men do. You might want a little bit more of a 10-finger grip in that case. So I see that all the time. I see people play great golf. I see strong guys too. People who do have plenty of strength use a 10-finger grip. So it's really personal preference as far as that is concerned. Now, as far as the way that your hands go on the grip, there's really only one rule that I really go by. That's called the short thumb. So what that means is, just in general, when you're holding the grip, that you have a bone right here in your wrist, and you want that grip to be the butt end of that grip to be pretty close to that. So you can see right there, I got that bone in my wrist, my hand's right there, and you can see here I have sort of a shortish thumb. Now, the geometry of your hand, if you have really huge hands or long thumbs, short thumbs, it may look different than yours. I don't even really know if I have a proportional hand or not, but you can see here, this is what we call the short thumb. So what would be wrong would be if you had it like this. So this would be, it's past that bone in my hand. It's in between. It's basically right down the middle of my wrist. This would be great for a putting grip because it keeps the club in line with my forearm there. But if I use that in my actual grip of the club, I can't hinge my wrist. You can see I can hinge my wrist, but I can't get the club. I'm going to have a really hard time getting any sort of lag when I do that. So, and then the vice versa, if you have it just completely in the fingers like this would be a long thumb, which I see oftentimes. This is probably the most often grip mistake that I see, is that the thumb is way past. But when you have the club like this, it's hard to control. You don't have a lot of coverage on the grip. You're just holding it in your fingers. So you want to have that happy medium, which for most people is going to be that bone on your wrist there, right up against the grip. And that allows you to spread your fingers onto the grip, hold it up against your hand, and then it also allows you to be able to hinge the club. You can see I can easily hinge the club and get lag from that position. So that's really it as far as the what would be the lead hand. And then for your trail hand, it's very, very easy. The lifeline of your hand here, that's the line that goes right through kind of the middle of your hand between the pads there. I want to take that lifeline and I want to put that right on top of my thumb. So you can see here, I'm taking that lifeline and I'm putting it right on top of my thumb, and then I'm gripping the club just like that. So now you can see I have my grip on the club. Now you can have a very strong grip, which would look something like this, or you can have a very weak grip, which would look something like that. It's really up to you, completely personal preference. I will say, if you are someone who struggles with getting that club face closed, or you hit a lot of slices, or you're struggling with forward shaft lean, you may want to just experiment with a little bit of a stronger grip, because it's easier. It's easier to get that club face to close when you're trying. Basically, it's easier to get the club face to close for the most part, because you don't have to rotate the hands over. You don't have to do this with your hands as much. So let me just show you an example. And I know I'm going on for a while about the grip. I don't think we have a lot of questions. Yeah, we don't have any questions after Melvin's questions, and Melvin's question will only take about 2 seconds. So I'm going to go for a little bit on the grip, if you don't mind. But if you got questions, get them posted on there, so that I can answer them. So if I have a very weak grip, so this would be a grip where I'm putting my thumb straight down the basically right on top of the shaft there, and you can see the V in my hand, which you'll hear this a lot. A lot of instructors will say the V of the hand. All that means is it's the crease between your thumb and your hand. You can see there's a little crease right there. That's what we're talking about when we say the V. So when I hold the club like that, this would be considered a weak grip. You can see that V is pointing straight up to my chin. So now if I get that and I come down to contact and I want to have forward shaft lean and I want to have that club face square, you can't see the club face, but just trust me, it's square, and I have some good forward shaft lean here. So in order to do that, look at my wrist angles. My trail wrist has got to be bent back quite a bit, which for a lot of people is very difficult to do. It feels like a very weak position. And then my lead wrist has to be very bowed. Again, a very difficult position. You're going to see most people, especially those who have weak grips, who are amateurs, you're going to see them in this kind of position at contact. You're going to see a lot of cupping in that lead wrist, and you're going to see that trail wrist is going to be pretty flat, or even bowed coming through, because you're trying to push that club through. So now let's go to an extreme strong grip. So I'm going to say that would be getting the V pointed somewhere, outside my trail shoulder. So that would be, I'm going to put my thumb on the back of the grip here. And then I'm going to put my trail hand, remember the lifeline of the hand right on top of the thumb right there. I'm an interlocking person for my grip. So now square club face, forward shaft lean. Here I am at contact. Now look at my trail wrist. My trail wrist does not need to be as bent back as much. A lot of people, because most people are used to doing that, but it's not as much. And then my lead wrist, it actually looks like it's cupped. Now, if you look at it from this angle, you'll see that it is flat. But if you look, because I have such a strong grip, it has the appearance when looking from face on that it is cupped. This is a much easier position for most people to get into. So if you're struggling with forward shaft lean, you're struggling with squaring up the club face, you're struggling with things like that, try a strong grip. See if it helps. That could definitely be helpful. I always tell people I'd much rather you have a stronger grip than weaker. Now, if you're someone who's doing really well with that, you're getting great forward shaft lean. And so, for instance, that would be someone like Ben Hogan, for example. Ben Hogan had a fairly weak to neutral grip. He was very, very good at getting that wrist bowed and into impact. In fact, more comfortable, because all you have to do is just kind of stand down, and it feels pretty natural. But if you get like this a little bit, it can help you to get some forward shaft lean and get that club face closing. Anything will become natural after you. Anything will become natural after you do it for a while, after it becomes second nature. All right, so let's continue here. So Stan, I hope that helps. If you have any further questions about the grip, don't hesitate to ask. I'll be happy to answer for you. Now, I restarted my computer, and it's still giving me the connection is unstable. I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully this is coming through fine, but I don't know why it keeps doing that. We may have to get in touch with YouTube, see what's going on there, because everything else seems to be working fine as far as my internet goes. So Melvin R says, what is the longest 7-iron shot that you've seen? It's hard to know for sure. Probably over 200 yards. I mean, I've seen an 8-iron. I've watched Dustin Johnson hit a 200-yard 8-iron before. So, it's not probably something like that over that. The furthest 7-iron that I've hit is probably about 190, I would say. Now, I don't have near the club head speed that Dustin Johnson has. at least on a regular basis. But neighborhood, it's all about club head speed and then de-lofting the face. So are you taking your 7-iron? When Dustin Johnson hits a 200-yard 8-iron, he's de-lofting the face a lot. So meaning he's taking loft off the face. Basically, he's taking his 8-iron and he's turning it into like a 5-iron or 4-iron, and then he's also hitting it with a lot of club head speed. So probably about 165, maybe a little bit more, 165 to 170, I would say, is your average 7-iron on tour. But yeah, your best players in the world, the guys that are longer, they're going to be hitting 7-irons, 180, probably, 175 to 180 probably as a regular stock shot. Maurice B says, BSMC, so he's referring to the ball striking masterclass, which I can talk about here in a little bit. What happens over Christmas? Well, I have access to the BSME beyond 12 weeks. When I return from Christmas breaks, 2 weeks, will I have to cram 3 weeks into one, or do I simply resume where I left off? So what you get is, so nothing happens with the ball striking masterclass. It's going on just as if there was no Christmas or anything like that. You're going to continue to get the emails saying that the next week is open. You can leave off where you left off, or you can try to cram it all into a couple of weeks. It's completely up to you. But yeah, there's no we don't pause it or anything for Christmas. It's just going to keep on going. But yeah, if you're not familiar with what the ball striking masterclass is, it's our course. And I'll go into your other question here in a second. It's a course that we work on your ball striking ability, basically your skill level as it comes to golf. So most of what we do on the website and what's included in your membership is working on technique. Technique is important. It's the foundation to having good skill. It makes it a lot easier. You can be less skilled if you have better technique. You can be less skilled and play better. But you can also outskill your technique. So they're both very, very important. But most people are really into the technique side, which is why we provide it with the membership. In the ball striking side, since it's not something that really a lot of people are in tune with or interested in, they don't know that they need it. It's we provide it. We provide it with instructor feedback from myself, so that people can go through it more easily. But yeah, so. That's what the ball striking masterclass is. Now, since we do provide that instructor feedback, we offer it on a limited basis. We only offer it. We only open up 100 or 150 spots or so every 1 or 2 months. So if you want to take the course, it's $147. And to answer your question, Maurice, you do get access to this course for as long as you are an All Access member. So as long as you keep your membership to Top Speed Golf, you will have access to all of the videos in the ball striking masterclass. The only thing that you lose after the program is over is the access to the Facebook group. I really wish I could keep everyone in that group forever, but if we did that, we would have hundreds and hundreds of people in there. I don't know how many people have gone through the course, but I'd say it's probably a little bit over 1,000, maybe a little bit more. Might be close to 2,000. I'm not sure. But if I kept all those people in there, I would never sleep. I would just be answering Facebook messages and posts and stuff all day. So as you know, I do this live thing every weekday. I also have unlimited swing review students that I work with. I do clinics with Robin. So I've got a lot of things going on. I don't have the time to be able to answer those. So we have to limit it and kick people out after the program is over. But as always, you can always come to office hours if you have questions. And then if you want further feedback on your actual swing, you want me to look at your golf swing and give you feedback on it, I do offer the Element Swing Review program, where you can, if I don't have spots available, you can sign up for my waiting list, and then you'll get to be first notified whenever I open up spots. I try to open up spots every month or two. Sometimes I'm not able to because people don't cancel and they stay with me and keep on working with me, or I'm not able to take on more students or things of that nature. So like this month, I was only, I think we're getting ready to send out an email with some spots. So, but this month I wasn't able to take on as many as I used to just because I just don't have as many spots available. I don't have time to be able to do that. So if you're wanting to work with me, make sure you join that waiting list. To go to the page where you can find that, at the top of the page there above the video, you'll see where it says Learn More. If you click on that, that's going to take you to the sales page for the Unlimited Swing Reviews, where you can find more information about what it's all about. And then from any video, or not any video, but any screen, anywhere on the website for the most part, if you click that Get a Review at the top of the page, that'll also take you to that page. So any questions about Unlimited Swing Reviews, I'll be happy to answer on here as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get your questions up there, and we'll be answering them. Like I said, I'm here till 4 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure we get some good questions in here. I know sometimes, I don't know why, but for some reason we get really loaded up with questions at the end, and there's like nothing in the middle. So let's get some questions in the middle here, because if we get to the end of it, unfortunately, I may not be able to answer your question if you ask it toward the end, because there won't be enough time left, and I'm not able to stay on here past 4. So get your questions posted on here, and we'll get them to make sure that they get answered. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow will be 9 a.m. Eastern time when we will start the office hours. So in the meantime, I'll just be pull emails I have not looked at yet. Louise or Louis S, pardon me if I'm not pronouncing your name quite correctly, but Louis is asking, is the move executed the same with all clubs? Yes. Basically, you are shallowing out the club and squaring up the club earlier, or in squaring up the club face with forward shaft lean with all clubs. Any club that you're trying to get some good compression and some and be able to hit the ball well, some forward shaft lean, you're doing that with any club. So basically, I think a lot of people don't quite understand exactly what the move is. So I'm going to go over real quickly what exactly the move is. So I think if you understand what it is, it basically answers the question, right? So if you understand what the move is basically a piece of two things that are put into one move. Number one, it's the shallowing of the club. So what I mean by that is this would be steep, this would be shallow, right? So we want to get this club shallowing out. And the reason why we want to do that is because if we're steep, here we are. If I'm steep like this, and this is in the downswing, so lead arm parallel to the ground, the downswing. If this shaft is in a steep position, more of a vertical position, that club head is off plane. So to get that club to the golf ball on plane, I'll have to make a compensation. So what I'll do is I will stand up. When I stand up, that raises my hands, and then it drops the club back on the plane. So you can hit some good golf shots. The problem with that is when I do that, when I stand up, what happens? I have to flip. I have to flip the club because I've stood up. The other option is I may be steep, and then I may just come over the top. So I may just kind of continue to come down steep and kind of chop down into the golf ball, come over the top, hit a big old slice or a pull, or if I'm lucky, it might go online. But that's an option. Or you'll do a combination of this and maybe continue and just kind of chop and drop the head right into the ground, right behind the golf ball, in a big old chunk or a top. So those are the options. Most people who are lower handicap golfers who hit the ball pretty well and they're standing up, they're doing this. They're standing up and dropping the head underneath. So if I'm nice and shallow here, I have this club, I have the butt end of the club. If you pause me when my lead arm's parallel to the ground, you draw a line from the butt end of the club down to the golf ball, or down to the ground, excuse me. What you'd like to see is this butt end of the club pointing a little bit outside the golf ball. So now this club head is on plane, and I don't have to make any compensations in the downswing. I can just rotate into the golf ball and stay in my posture. And then the opposite is if you can actually over shallow it. This is very rare, but I see it every now and then because people, we've been told shallow, 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 but they don't really quite understand the reasoning why you want to do it. Because, we say shallow, shallow, shallow because most people are in this kind of position. But then people get to where they're like this at the top. Well, this is too shallow. And when you're too shallow, now I have to make a compensation. And typically that's going to involve something like this, where this club is way under plane. So if I keep that there, I'm just going to swing way too much from the inside. I'm probably going to chunk it. If I manage to get to the golf ball, I'm probably going to have my face wide open. Or what most people do to compensate for this, they'll get where they're really, really shallow, and then they'll get that elbow out away. So they come down here, they're really shallow. They'll get that elbow out away to get this club back on plane. So now I've done this, and then I'll do from there. I'll have to do kind of a scoopy action from there. It's rare, but you see it every now and then. So it's both ends of the spectrum there. So we want to have it nice and shallowed out. A good place to be is butt into the club, pointing down or a little bit outside of the golf ball. If you are inside the golf ball, you are steep. If you have this too much outside the golf ball, it's rare, but you're too shallow, and you may see that you kind of come like that in the downswing. So that's the first part of it. So that allows you to stay in your posture. You don't have to make any kind of compensation. The second part of it is because when you stand up and flip, you're used to squaring up the club face by pushing your trail hand through. So most people who flip are coming into contact with the club face. It's kind of like this. So here I am, no forward shaft lane. I have a square club face. And you can see my trail wrist is flat. My lead wrist has cupping in it. And by that, I mean my knuckles are kind of bending back toward my elbow. You can see I'm kind of in this position right there. Well, when I'm in that position, I'm adding loft to the face. I'm coming in very, very shallow at the turf with my angle of attack, basically the way that the club is coming into the golf ball. And I'm going to hit a lot of thin shots and a lot of high shots. Balls that are ballooning up in the air, very, very spinny kind of shots. So it's just hard to be consistent when you do that. So when you get forward shaft lean, when you get your hands more pushed forward, if you keep these wrist angles, so here I am, my trail wrist is pushing through. My trail wrist my lead wrist is kind of cupping. And if I do that and I just push my hands forward and I don't change these wrist angles, what happens? My club face is wide open. So now you can see I haven't changed these wrist angles. My club face is wide open. So what you have to do, which is the second part of the move, is square that club face by turning that handle. So that's doing this with the lead wrist. That's that bowing of the lead wrist. Now I'm exaggerating. This is, you're not going to do it necessarily this much in the swing, but this is what's happening. And then with the trail wrist, I'm doing that as well. I'm bending it back. So this position right here, as I'm coming into contact, you can't see the club face, but it is square here. You can see I have a flat lead wrist or even slightly bowed, and my trail wrist is in a bent back position. So you can see if I lift that up, you can see forward shaft lean, square club face. So if we put those two together, the squaring or the shallowing of the club and the squaring of the club face, it looks something like this. And that's the tennis racket drill from the move course. If you look at the reason why we do it with a tennis racket is because when you get that club face out into space, it's hard to see where it's pointing. At address, it's very easy to see where that leading edge is pointing. You can tell that square to the target. But when it gets out in space, it's really, really hard to tell. So when you use a tennis racket and visualize this as the club face, it really helps you to understand exactly what's going on. So when you do the tennis racket drill, what you're doing is you're going up to the top, you're shallowing out the club, so that's getting the strings to point up to the sky, and then you're squaring that face earlier. So now that's turning the strings to where I'm pointing back toward the camera. So I'm shallowing and I'm squaring the face early. And now, if you just stand up and do this at home, if you have a club next to you or even a tennis racket, even better. If you do this where you're shallowed out and you are turning that handle down from this position here, it should feel like all you have to do to come down into impact is stay in your posture and just rotate into contact. And you see when I do that, when I'm shallowed out, I turn that handle down, I don't have to go like this through impact. I can just turn that handle down and really just rotate into impact. And now look, at impact, I have tons of forward shaft lean. This is super powerful. I'm hitting the ball like a sledgehammer. I'm de-lofting that face so much. And I'm coming in and I'm got lots of compression on that ball, and I'm just rotating my body through. So that's what it should kind of feel like when you're working on that drill. So if you want to work on the move, and hopefully that gives you an understanding, you want to do that with all your clubs. You don't want to come down steep and flip with your driver either. Even though, people ask me, like, do you de-loft the driver? Yes, you do. Now, it won't look de-lofted because at impact, but you want to do the same motion through impact. The only difference is that when you're hitting a ball off the turf, the ground is in the way. So we have to hit ball first contact. So we have to come down. We're playing that ball, a little bit ahead of the middle of our stance, straight down from the lead ear. We're getting that ball first contact, and then we're releasing that out front. Whereas with a driver, the ground's not in the way because we're teeing the ball up. Now, hopefully it's not in the way, right? You're teeing that ball up. So you miss the ground and you swing up into the golf ball. So now my hands are basically in that same spot at impact. The only difference is here's the ball off the ground, forward. You can see plenty of forward shaft lean. I'm getting ball first contact. And then visualize, here's a ball. I'm playing it forward in my stance with the driver and up on a tee. So now at contact, it looks something like that. So not a lot of forward shaft lean there, right, visually, but I'm still in the same position. I'm still de-lofting the face. What flippers look like with the driver is something like this. They actually usually look like they have backward shaft lean, right? The shaft is actually leaning away from the target. You're adding too much loft and spin and losing distance when you do that. Not to mention, you're probably going to be hitting a lot of thin shots with the driver. So Louis or Lewis, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Hopefully that helps you understand. You want that with all of your clubs that you're wanting to get compression. Now, if you're trying to hit a wedge shot where you're trying to add loft, maybe a flopper or something like that, maybe you wouldn't do the move quite as much. You let that club release a little bit earlier with an open face so you can get that ball going up in the air. But any shot that you're trying to get some really good compression and some really solid contact with, which is going to be, all your drives, basically, pretty much all your approach shots, right? It's going to be a lot of your golf shots. So, yes, you're wanting to do that for sure. All right, so go ahead and get your questions in there. Looks like we got one in here from Joe. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them in there. I'll be on here for another 30 minutes or so. So go ahead and post them on there. And Maurice B must be a friend of Lou. He says her name is pronounced Louise. Must be a friend. All right. So I apologize if I pronounced it incorrectly, but Louise, I'll remember that in the future. All right. So Joe D says, I saw Clay's recent video on swing path. How high should the hands be at the top of the backswing? So it really just depends. It's personal preference. I say go as high as you can go and be able to get the club to be on path, because there are pros and cons to having the hands really high. So here's why you want to have your hands high. The reason is because it creates more space for the club to accelerate. And the more space you have for the club to accelerate, the more club head speed you can generate and the more distance you can have, right? So the problem with that is that when you get your hands really, really high, it's harder to get that club to shallow out. To get this club to shallow out, I got to bring my hands way down here in the downswing. And it's very hard for a lot of people. Some people, they get their hands up high and then they just kind of chop down steep into the golf ball. So you got to find that happy medium for you. Go look at Bubba Watson's swing. Very, very vertical swing. But you'll see when he's coming down, he gets that club up to the top. And you see when he's coming down, he gets that club nicely shallowed out. And he's in this position right here. But if you look at someone who's on the other end of the spectrum, which would be Matt Kuchar, right? He swings very, very flatly, very, very low hands. He doesn't have to do anything to get this club to be shallowed out around plane. It's already there. He just rotates back and through. The problem is with the way Matt Kuchar swings is he doesn't have a lot of space and time to accelerate the club. So he's not a real long hitter. He's very consistent, but he's not a very long hitter. So you got to find that happy medium that works for you. It's great if you're consistent. You look at the guys that hit the most fairways on tour or something like that. They're usually the guys that are not getting their on their way out of the tour because they're not hitting it long enough. So you got to find that happy medium. It's definitely important to get the ball in play in the fairway or even just off the fairway. It's very, very important for that to happen. But you got to get out and get the ball out there too. You can't just try to hit. If you're hitting, all your fairways and you're just dinking it out there real short, I'll put it this way. It's much better to be um, 150 yards out from the rough and have a shot at the green than to be 200 yards out in the fairway. Now, if you're playing on a course that just is the rough is brutal, you're not going to have any chance from hitting out of it. That changes things, obviously. But if you're playing your normal course, which I think most people are playing courses where the rough, you might get unlucky every now and then, but for the most part, the rough, you can hit out of it fine. It's not as good as the fairway, but every now and then you might get a bad lie. But for the same thing happens in the fairway. You're going to get bad lies and divots in the fairway too. But what I'm saying is it's so much easier. You're going to be hitting, for me, that's like a 5-6 iron from that 200 yards. Whereas at that 150 mark, I'm hitting a 9 iron. I don't know about you, but I'm going to hit a lot more greens with my 9 iron than I am my 5 iron, or I'm at least going to hit it a lot closer to the hole. If I lose one to the right with my 9 iron, I might hit it 20 yards to the right. If I lose one to the right of my 5 iron, it might go 30, 40 yards to the right. So your proximity to the hole is going to be a lot better. It's a lot easier to make solid contact with your shorter irons. So you got to find that happy medium. So as far as how high your hands should go, as high as you can get them and still get them to come down on plane. So there's a great drill from the 20-minute distance fixed course. It's the skyscraper drill. I believe you do it either in the second or third week. I want to say it's the third week. But yeah, it's a great drill to help you get your hands up there, because the more space and time you have to accelerate the club, the more the more speed that you can generate and the more distance you're going to get. So you got to find that happy medium that works the best for you. All right. So Joe D says, what is the proper or best ball position for a full shot with a pitching wedge? Is it just below the lead ear, like a mid iron? Personally, it's really, I know I'm kind of giving you wishy-washy answers, but it's really personal preference. You can absolutely play it straight down from the lead ear. Personally, I like to play all my wedges about in the middle of my stance. So just to go through ball position, to make it really, really simple, any shot that you hit off the turf, you can play straight down from the lead ear. So if you have, and this is assuming that you have proper spine tilt and everything. So if you're set up like this at address, that straight down from the lead ear is going to be, way too far forward. But if you're set up with a proper spine tilt, 6 to 8 degrees angled away, straight down from the lead ear, that's going to be slightly ahead of the middle of your stance, a ball or two ahead of the middle of your stance. So that's where I would recommend straight down from the lead ear, any shot from off the turf. But you can add in some caveats in here. Here's what I do. So straight down from the lead ear for pretty much all shots off the turf. For longer clubs like a hybrid or a 3-wood, or maybe even like a 3 or 4 iron that I'm hitting off the turf, I'll do a ball forward of that. So straight down from the lead ear, then a ball forward of that. So about, right in there. That's where I'll play those. And that just helps me to come in a little bit more shallow. Also want to get the ball up in the air a little bit more, which can be really important for those shots. Because a lot of times if you're going for the green on those shots, a lot of times because those clubs, there's so little loft on them, they come in with a very flat angle of descent, and it's hard to hold the green. So if I put that up in my stance a little bit, it allows me to get that ball up in the air a little bit more, which allows me, which makes it easier to hit the green. Now with a wedge, I might play a ball back of that, which basically puts it in the middle of my stance. Wedges, so pitching wedge, 54 degree, 58 degree, whatever wedges you have, I like to play them in the middle of my stance for a couple of reasons. One, it promotes a lower ball flight, because you're going to have a little bit more forward shaft lean, and you're also going to be hitting down on the ball a little bit more. So that allows the ball to come out a little bit lower. And with a wedge, I like to hit it a little bit lower. I feel like it's a little bit easier to control when it's lower than hoisted way up in the air. If you were to play a wedge where I play my 3-wood or my hybrid, I'd just hit it way too high. And I would also be susceptible to thin shots and things like that, which can be really bad. If you're trying to hit a 100-yard wedge shot and you hit it 140, because you knifed it, that's a big issue, right? So we don't want to be doing that. So I like to play a little bit further back in the stance. That downward angle of attack, that also adds more spin. So that spin and that extra compression I'm getting from getting a little bit more forward shaft lean helps me hold the green and control it a little bit more. So that's my preference. But you can play any shot that you hit off the turf straight down from the lead here, and it would be a pretty good place. Now you got to play around with it yourself. Go out there, try hit some wedge shots from in the middle of your stance. Try hitting some wedge shots from straight down from the lead ear. See what works best for you. Try it in all sorts of ball positions and see what the results are and find what works best for you. Go to the extreme. Go off the back foot all the way to off the front foot and see what works best for you. That's really the only way to really know for sure. I can give you a general good baseline or guideline to go out there and go by, but there's no absolute truth. You're going to see tour players playing the ball forward in their stance with their wedges and some playing it back. You're going to see some tour players play the driver way up in their stance and some play it a little bit more, not in the middle, but not too far in front of the middle. You're going to see things like that because there's no universal truth there. It's really your personal preference of what works best. All right, so go ahead and post your questions. Continue to post your questions on there. But good question, Joe. Thanks for asking. Yeah, we got another 20 minutes or so on here. So go ahead and post your questions, and we'll get them answered. All right, so it looks like James has a question. So go ahead and answer that here. Let me get back to my screen. All right, so it's like Daniel's got a question as well. Awesome. All right, so James M says, this is asked over and over. What can I do to gain more speed? My speed is around 80 miles per hour. So do the 20-minute distance fixed course. That's really what you need to do to get more speed. So basically, we've created a program. It's a 3-week program. If you do it the way that it's laid out, to help people get more speed and to get more distance. Basically, we found that there's 3 things. There's 3 main categories that help you to get speed. Number 1 is range of motion. So to break that down into 2 things, we've already talked about 1, which is the high hands. We just talked about high hands. So getting the hands really up there, high hands. And what that does is that creates more space and time for you to accelerate the club. That allows you to get more speed. So that's 1. And that's not the biggest one. The biggest one that helps you get more speed in the range of motion category is your shoulder turn. And that's also in the top speed golf system known, AKA the power turn, right? So that's getting these shoulders to turn quite a bit here in the backswing. So that's freeing up the hips, letting the hips go, freeing up the hips. If you restrict the hips, you're going to restrict your shoulders. So have that free up your hips. Lift that that lead heel off the ground, turn that trail heel out so that you can really rotate those hips open. Average hip turn on tour is roughly about 50 degrees. You can go as much as 60 degrees or so to get a really good hip turn. And then it comes from the separation of your hips to your shoulders. Roughly on tour, that's going to be about 50 degrees again. And that's coming mostly from your thoracic spine. If you have bad posture, you're kind of like this, you're really hunched over, or maybe you have what's S spine, you kind of stick your butt out a little bit or something like that. That can be locking up your spine and restricting you from turning as much as you can. So make sure you have a nice flat back. If if your spine is built in a way that doesn't allow you to do that, there's not much you can do about it. As you get older, sometimes that happens. You kind of get a little bit hunched over or something like that. Maybe that's something, if you went to a chiropractor, that would be able to help you. But there's certain things that there's nothing you can do about. But the hips, everybody can get a good hip turn. Even I've worked with people who have hip replacements, and they say their hips are better than ever. And everybody can get a good hip turn. Not everyone can get the good separation, but hey, if you go, maybe you can go to a chiropractor. It can help with that. The last piece is the protraction and retraction of the shoulders. Unless you have a shoulder mobility issue, they're going to be able to do that as well. And typically, most people do it naturally. It's not something that they have to think about when you're turning your shoulders. And what protraction and retraction of the shoulders is it's protraction is movement of the shoulder that puts your shoulder blade away from your spine. So that would be protraction. Retraction is shoulder blade toward the spine, right? So you're doing that as you're going up to the top. Your lead shoulder here is protracting. Your trail shoulder is retracting. Again, that's something that you do naturally. So average total shoulder turn on tour is roughly about 120 degrees. It's actually slightly less than that. But just to make the numbers simple, 50 degrees in the hips, 50 degrees of the spine, basically, and then 20 degrees in the shoulders. You get about 10 degrees each. So if you are restricting any of those, you're going to restrict your turn. Now, some people can do a lot more of all of them, which is fantastic. If you look at Dustin Johnson, he's swinging much further past 120 degrees. It's 130 some, most likely, but he's a very flexible guy. He's turning his hips a lot. He has a lot of flexibility in that thoracic spine area. And he's getting lots of protraction and retraction of the shoulder as well. So that's where that comes from. So getting that first piece is range of motion, which if you break that down is big hip turn, big shoulder turn, getting those shoulders turn a lot, and then high hands. So that's creating more space for your club to accelerate. The second category is sequencing. And within sequencing, there are the subcategories of loading up properly. So if you have kind of a reverse weight shift where you're kind of getting on your lead side in the backswing, or you're just kind of trying to stay centered and not get load up on your trail side, you could be losing some distance because of that. You think about any powerful athletic movement, they all load up, and then there's a weight transfer, which is the second piece. So if you think about a baseball pitcher, Garrett Cole just got paid millions and $300 some million, right? He's a very powerful pitcher. He's completely loading up. Here he's winding up, and then he fires off and he throws it. He would not be able to throw the way that he does if he didn't load up and have a momentum transfer. There's no baseball pitchers just going like this. That's just like batting practice, right? So you got to be just like in your golf swing. You got to load up, and then you got to get a proper weight transfer to your lead side. If you are falling back in the downswing, or you're just not transferring your weight until your arms swing in front of your body, if you're not getting that proper weight transfer, which is the second subcategory, you're not going to have a very powerful swing. The next piece of sequencing is lag, right? So if I'm casting the club, I'm burning out all this energy and then just kind of scooping through impact, I'm going to lose a lot of speed. So generating that lag, getting this nice sharp angle, and then the last piece is releasing that lag, getting that lag to release and whip through contact as much as I can. That's the fourth piece, and that falls into the category of sequencing. So those are the technique pieces for speed, range of motion, and sequencing. These are all the drills that we work on in the 20-minute distance fix to get there. The last piece, which is something that you'll be doing in every single drill, is something that's called neural adaptation. And what that is just to sum it up, it's just swinging as hard as you can. It's getting more comfortable with swinging hard. And if you do that over the course of 3 weeks, then I'm not saying there's a difference between your playing speed and your speed training as hard as you can, 100% effort swing. There's a difference between those things. But as your 100% effort, as hard as you possibly can swing goes up, your playing speed, the one that you're comfortable with out on the golf course, is going to go up as well. So just tell a quick story about myself. I've done this speed training. I went through it. I started out 108, 110. I took 10 swings. They were all between 108 and 110. And then I took a few more swings and just swinging as hard as I possibly could. Nothing else. My only thought was just swing as hard as I possibly could. I got one up to 114. So that was my as hard as I could swing. Went through the 3 weeks of the drills, 3 or 4 weeks. And over that time, I was swinging as hard as I could, and I was doing all the range of motion and sequencing type stuff. And I got to where my as hard as I could, 100% effort swing, was 124 miles per hour. So my as hard as I could swing went up 10 miles per hour, which is typical. That's usually what we see. Not everyone's going to get that, but some people are going to get a lot more than that, especially if you're not someone. I'm actually a fairly aggressive swinger. So for me to get 10 more miles per hour more is actually pretty huge. And then my playing speed swing. So my swing that I would go out on the golf course and use was around 117, 118. So my as hard as I could swing went up as I was doing as hard as I could drills, and my playing speed, the one that I was comfortable with, it felt just like the 108, 110 swing, but now I'm swinging 117, 118 because I've gotten used to swinging harder. So I'm not going to go into all the science with that. There is some stuff about that in the 20-minute distance fixed course. You just got to go through and do it. But if you do anything for your golf game, this is what I'd recommend: the 20-minute distance fixed course. It just, there's no higher correlation to lowering your handicap than gaining distance, and this is the best course for gaining distance out there. So that's what I'd recommend, is going through the 20-minute distance fixed course. To get to the course, it's very easy. Just go up to the top of the page, and you can either click the house icon that will take you to the home page. And if you scroll down the home page, you'll see all the lists of all the courses there. That's the one right there, that top one. It's 20-minute distance fixed. That's the one that you want. Or you can always go to the instruction tab, hover your mouse over the instruction tab. That will expand a menu, and I believe it's at the top of that where you can click. So get started on that 20-minute distance fix. If you're looking for club heads, I would tell you to do. So Daniel F says, do you think that after we get our swing speed up, we should focus on smash factor? So yeah, you're focusing on that as you're going through it. So as you're swinging as fast as you can, you're going through the speed drills, you're going to notice that you're going to have a tendency, right? So the tendency might be to hit everything off the toe, or the tendency might be to, maybe you're just having trouble hitting the ball in general. So as you're going through it, you're going to notice that there is a tendency there. So maybe on the next one, you swing as hard as you can. If you're hitting everything out on the toe, then I would actually intentionally strike it on the heel. So now my swing thought is, okay, 100% effort. I'm going to try to hit this on the heel. All right. And that will most likely move it toward the center. And if you still strike it on the toe, then you need to exaggerate it even more. Or maybe you need to stand a little bit closer to the golf ball. Or maybe you need to feel like you are more in your toes as you're coming through contact. Maybe you're kind of stepping back and pulling away a little bit. So, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. There's most likely going to be a tendency there. Try to fix that tendency. And you may find that there's another tendency. Maybe you start striking in the center of the face, but it's too high or it's too low, or, there's all kinds of things that can be going on. So look at your swing on video, find that there's a tendency, and then do the speed training and try to fix the tendency as well as you're going through it. All right, so John T says, what are the criteria for the masterclass? I think you're asking about the ball striking masterclass. So basically the ball striking masterclass, not sure exactly what we're working on, what we call the big four. So the big four is your strike location, your face angle, your club path, and your ground contact. So strike location is going to be where you're striking it on the club face. You're going to work on your awareness of the club face and getting those strikes more in the center. Obviously, that's going to really help with your ball striking. And then your face angle is just the direction that the club face is pointing at impact. So if the face open, is the face closed, so on and so forth. Club path is the direction the club head is moving through impact. So that's either, when someone says they're swinging in to out or out to in, that is, they're referring to club path. So we work on a lot of the club path and face relationship. So if you hit a ball with the face open to the direction that the club face is moving, it's going to be a fade, right? And if you hit a ball with a club face that is closed to the direction that's moving, so let's say the club's moving this way and the face is moving that way, and the face is pointed that way, it's going to be a draw or maybe even a hook, depending on how far off they are. And then if they're moving in the same direction, it's going to be straight. So that's club path is the third piece. And the last piece is your ground contact. So this club comes down, it reaches a low point and then moves its way up. So basically, you're working on controlling that low point. Where is the club coming down, striking the turf in relationship to the golf ball? Ideally, we'd like that to be for shots that are off the turf. We'd like that to be a little bit ahead of the golf ball so you can get ball first contact and then take the divot afterwards. And then for a driver, you want that to happen before the ball so that it can bottom out and then move up into the golf ball. So those are all things that we work on in the ball striking masterclass. As far as what you need to get into it, here I answer this question quite a bit for people who are on the fence about signing up. This course is for everyone. There's very few people who this is not for. I used to think that it's not really for beginners, but I get lots of beginners that come into the course and can prove me completely wrong. I used to kind of think that you need to work on kind of the basics, but I couldn't be further from the truth. I was very wrong about that. This is for beginners as well. The only people this is not for are total beginners. So if you just started playing golf and you don't know how to grip the club, you don't know how to even stand up to the club or just hit the ball in general, if you're in that area, you need to focus on TopSpeed Golf is not even the right website for you. You probably need some personal lessons or help from a buddy that knows the basics or something like that. That's going to be the best thing for you. But once you get kind of in the swing of things, no pun intended, but figuring out exactly how to stand, how to grip the club, and things like that, this course is great. I had a woman on here. She had been playing for even a year, and she got a hole-in-one after going through the ball striking masterclass. Got a hole-in-one and was playing. She was having so much fun playing, really, really awesome. And she was not far from a total beginner, and she was really kicking butt on there. So it's for anyone. I actually just had someone today or yesterday that started the program and said that it was too hard for them. But I had to explain to him that, hey, you just have to make the drills easier. You're at a certain level, you got to make the drills easier. So it's for everyone. The only other person it's not for, so total beginners, and the only other person that the program is not for is someone who's already doing this stuff. So maybe a tour player that's already practicing like this. I've heard Tiger practices like this. Bubba Watson practice. I would imagine most tour players do something very similar to what we talk about in the ball striking masterclass, hitting draws and fades and things like that. So any tour player, there's a lot that I'm sure don't. But anybody who's already doing this stuff, the course is probably not for, because it's like taking a class in something that you're already doing really well. But yeah, other than that, it is for everyone. So that includes what those people that I just mentioned. That is probably like the 1% of people that it's not for. As far as people on our website, I would say it's probably more like 0.1%. All right, so let's see if we got any more questions here. All right, so it looks like we got a few more. So we got about 5 minutes left, so I'll do my best to answer the rest of the questions here. So Stan B says, thanks for the thoughts on grip. Much appreciated. No problem. Glad I get help. I've heard much on tempo, time from the start to top backswing and start to downswing impact. I've read best tempo is 0.93 seconds and or 1.06 seconds, both being a 3-to-1 ratio. Thoughts, please. So yeah, my thoughts on tempo are that good tempo is a product of having a good mechanic swing. So most of the time, yeah, the golf swing is around a second long, and your downswing is anywhere from a quarter second to a third of a second, and then the rest of your, the backswing is somewhere between, a second and, 3/4 of a second. That's not something that you should go out. My thoughts on it are, and some instructors may disagree with me here, is that tempo is not something, I believe that tempo is not something that you should go out and directly work on. Tempo is a product of having a good shoulder turn and good mechanics in the downswing. So if you're someone who has a really short swing, doesn't get a proper shoulder turn, then your backswing is going to be really short, and then your downswing, you're going to rush your downswing. So your swing's may not be that, that 1 second or 0.93 seconds long. If you have a good shoulder turn where you're you're getting a good at least 90-degree shoulder turn. You're looking something like this at the top of the swing. If you're getting a good 90-degree shoulder turn, your tempo is going to be good because you feel like you have a lot more time to accelerate the club, so you're not going to rush the downswing. Look at guys like Freddie Couples and Ernie Els. They are noted for how good their tempo is, right? Well, those guys, they're not swinging really soft and smooth and slow. Like, they're swinging hard. Freddie Couples' nickname is Boom Boom because he hits the ball way out there. He hits it a long way, right? So Freddie Couples, at the top of the swing, he feels like he has all this time and space to accelerate the club. So he's basically, it looks like it's excuse me, it's slow, but the reality is that he's swinging hard. So if you create that space, if you get a good shoulder turn and you get a proper weight shift and you release that club out in front, you're going to have good, very, very good tempo. So I would actually recommend working on those things, working on going out and having a perfect 3-to-1 tempo in your swing. It's most likely not going to help you at all if you work on tempo directly. In fact, it's probably going to hurt you because you're not going to be thinking about impact. You're going to be thinking about the timing of everything. And I'm telling you, it just doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't work very well. So work on the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system, and you will have fantastic tempo as a product of that. All right. So Joe D says, my missed swings default is generally a pull or hook. Which drills can I practice to emulate those misses? So we have a course that's called, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, so I do apologize for that, Joe, so I can answer the rest of the questions before we run out of time. But the best thing for you to do is go to work through our Stop Hooking or Never Hook Again course. You can get to this course by clicking the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the homepage. On the homepage, if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the courses on the website. Go to that Never Hook Again course and start working through those drills. All those drills are going to help you to get rid of your issue and help you understand why you're hooking it and so on and so forth. All right, so Ed D, we got one more question here and we got one more minute. So perfect. This is going to be the last question of the day from Ed D. So Ed D says, hi Q, your last response to my super narrow follow through confirmed I'm sliding, not turning. I'm focusing on the compression line and really turning the left hip, what feel like behind me. So I believe the first time I'm getting into a forward shaft lane, good straight line release. That's awesome. I've started drilling very small chip length swings in my basement. That's good. What do you suggest to ingrain over the winter? So yeah, just keep progressing that. You mentioned that you started with kind of chip length swings. Just keep making that swing a little bit longer. If that's working for you, you're getting in that good position. Just kind of with these shorter swings, get to where they're longer and longer and longer, and where you're able to sequence, get the sequence of it down with each and every longer swing until you basically progress up until you're at your full swing. That's what I would recommend doing. That'd be a great winter project for you to kind of work on. But yeah, I would constantly look at your swing on video, make sure that you're seeing everything that you feel is going on. Because remember, feel isn't always real, right? So we may feel like we're doing something, but it may not be the reality of the situation. So make sure that you're filming your swing and seeing what you're feeling is actually happening. And that way you can make adjustments, because I'd hate for you to do all these repetitions and then later find out that you are flipping the club. But this whole time it felt like you were getting forward shaft length. Well, if you would have saw that on video a month ago, you would have known, okay, I'm not getting forward shaft length. I need to exaggerate this even more, and that way you're not wasting a lot of time. So I know it can take a little bit of time to set up a video camera or something like that, or have someone, it's pain in the neck to ask somebody to do it. But I'm telling you, you can save yourself a lot of time and headache if you do that. People often ask me, what is the best training aid out there? It's always in your pocket. It's that phone. It's the camera on your phone. So make sure you're using that so that you can make sure that you're on the right track. All right, so we're out of time today. Ed, I hope that answers your question. But thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. So everybody have a good rest of your week, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks.